What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors goes head-to-head with late-night television's golden boy? It only took 17 seconds of heated comments for Stephen Colbert's carefully crafted nice guy image to crumble right before our eyes. Last night, viewers witnessed something nobody saw coming. Denzel Washington, the man who has commanded respect in Hollywood for decades, was literally kicked off the Late Show stage after Colbert completely lost his cool during what started as a routine interview. This is the exclusive inside story of how one of television's most beloved hosts showed his true colors when faced with hard truths. And trust me, you've never seen anything like this before. The night began like any other Late Show taping. The audience was buzzing with excitement as they waited for one of America's greatest actors to take the stage. Stephen Colbert, flashing his trademark grin, bounced onto the set with his usual energy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the legendary Denzel Washington. The crowd erupted as Denzel walked out, waving to the audience with that signature smile that has charmed moviegoers for generations. He settled into the guest chair, adjusting his suit jacket as Colbert took his place behind the desk. "Denzel, welcome back to the show. Always a pleasure to have you here," Colbert said, shuffling his note cards with practiced ease. "Good to be here, Stephen. Thanks for having me," Denzel replied, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that made him so beloved by fans worldwide. "So let's talk about your new film. I understand it tackles some pretty heavy subject matter," Colbert began, leaning forward with what appeared to be genuine interest. Denzel nodded thoughtfully. "It does. We're dealing with issues of corruption, power, and how the media sometimes fails the people it's supposed to serve." There was a slight pause. Something flickered across Colbert's face, but he maintained his smile. "Interesting choice of words there. The media failing people. Care to elaborate on that?" "Well, Stephen, I think we've seen too many examples lately of news programs and talk shows pushing narratives instead of seeking truth. People deserve honesty, not spin." The audience was quiet now, sensing something different in the air. Colbert's smile seemed a little more forced as he glanced at his cards again. "That's quite an accusation, Denzel. Are you saying that shows like this one are somehow dishonest with their viewers?" Denzel shifted in his chair, his expression remaining calm but serious. "I'm saying that when entertainment becomes more important than truth, we all lose. And I think your viewers are smart enough to recognize the difference." "I see," Colbert said, his voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. "So, you're here on my show, as my guest, suggesting that I'm not being truthful with my audience? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time for all of us in this business to look in the mirror and ask ourselves if we're really serving the people or just serving ourselves." The studio audience was completely silent now. You could feel the tension building like electricity in the air. Colbert set down his cards and leaned back in his chair. "You know what, Denzel? I've been doing this show for years. I've built my career on honesty and connecting with people. I don't need lectures about integrity from someone who lives in a Hollywood bubble." Denzel's eyebrows raised slightly, but his voice remained steady. "A Hollywood bubble? Stephen, I grew up in Mount Vernon. I worked construction jobs to pay for acting school. I've never forgotten where I came from, or the people who supported me along the way." "Oh, so now you're the man of the people?" Colbert shot back, his friendly demeanor completely gone now. "Come on, Denzel. You live in mansions and make millions per movie. Don't pretend you understand what regular Americans are going through." The audience was stunned. This was not the Stephen Colbert they knew and loved. This was someone else entirely, someone angry and defensive and lashing out at his guest. Denzel remained composed, which seemed to irritate Colbert even more. "Stephen, having success doesn't mean losing touch with reality. I still visit the neighborhoods where I grew up. I still talk to teachers and construction workers and nurses. Do you? Don't you dare question my connection to regular people," Colbert snapped, his voice rising. "I connect with millions of Americans every single night. Talking at people through a television camera isn't the same as talking with them," Denzel replied quietly. "When's the last time you had a real conversation with someone who disagrees with you? Not for a bit or a segment, but a real conversation?" Colbert's face was turning red now. The studio audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was supposed to be a fun interview about a new movie, not a confrontation between two public figures they both admired. "You know what your problem is, Denzel?" Colbert said, pointing his finger across the desk. "You think because you played some tough guys on screen, you can come on here and lecture me about how to do my job?" "I'm not lecturing anyone," Denzel said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel. "I'm just saying that maybe we should all think about whether we're part of the solution or part of the problem." "Part of the problem?" Colbert's voice was getting louder now. "I spend every night trying to make sense of the chaos in this world. I give people hope and laughter when everything seems dark. What do you do besides make movies and count your money?" The audience gasped. Even the camera operators looked shocked. This was spiraling out of control fast. Denzel sat back in his chair, studying Colbert with those intense eyes that had commanded movie screens for decades. "You want to know what I do, Stephen? I mentor young actors. I fund scholarships for kids who can't afford college. I built a community center in my old neighborhood, but I don't talk about it on talk shows because real service doesn't need publicity." Colbert's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He clearly hadn't expected that response. "And you know what else I do?" Denzel continued, his voice still measured but carrying more weight now. "I tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when people don't want to hear it. That's what real integrity looks like." The studio was dead silent, except for the hum of the camera still rolling. Colbert's face was now completely flushed, his carefully maintained television persona cracking like glass under pressure. He grabbed his coffee mug and took a long sip, clearly trying to regain his composure, but the damage was already done. The audience could see the real Stephen Colbert now, and it wasn't pretty. "You think you're so wise, don't you?" Colbert said, setting his mug down harder than necessary. "Sitting there in your expensive suit, talking about truth and integrity like you invented the concepts." Denzel's expression didn't change. If anything, he looked sad rather than angry. "Stephen, I'm not your enemy here. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation." "Honest?" Colbert laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want honest? Here's honest. You Hollywood types are all the same. You pretend to care about regular people, but you live in a completely different world. You have no idea what it's like to work a real job or worry about paying bills." "Stephen," Denzel said quietly, "you're making this personal when it doesn't need to be." "It is personal," Colbert shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. "You came on my show and attacked everything I've built, my credibility, my connection with my audience, my integrity. How is that not personal?" The audience was completely silent now, watching in shock as one of television's most beloved hosts melted down in real time. Some people were pulling out their phones, despite the no recording policy. Denzel leaned forward slightly. "I didn't attack anything, Stephen. I simply suggested that all of us, myself included, need to think about whether we're really serving the people or just ourselves. If that feels like an attack, maybe you should ask yourself why." "Don't you psychoanalyze me," Colbert snapped. "I don't need some actor telling me about my motivations." "I'm not psychoanalyzing anyone," Denzel replied calmly. "I'm just making an observation. You seem very defensive about something I never actually accused you of." Colbert stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. "You know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with your condescending tone and your holier-than-thou attitude." "Stephen, please sit down," Denzel said, his voice gentle but firm. "Let's just talk like two human beings." "No!" Colbert shouted, pointing his finger at Denzel again. "You don't get to come on my show and make me look bad in front of my audience. This is my house, and I won't be disrespected in it." Denzel stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. "I have nothing but respect for you as a person, Stephen. But respect goes both ways. I came here to talk about my film, and ended up being attacked for suggesting that we all need to be more honest with ourselves and our audiences." "Attacked?" Colbert's voice cracked slightly. "You think I attacked you? You're the one who came in here throwing accusations around about media integrity and Hollywood bubbles." "I never mentioned you specifically," Denzel said, his voice still steady. "If you felt attacked by a general comment about media responsibility, that says more about your conscience than my words." The studio audience was riveted. This was unlike anything they'd ever seen on late-night television. Some were starting to whisper among themselves, clearly taking sides in this unprecedented confrontation. "My conscience is fine. Thank you very much," Colbert shot back. "I sleep perfectly well at night knowing that I've entertained and informed millions of people." "Then why are you so angry?" Denzel asked simply. The question hung in the air like smoke. Colbert opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. For a moment, he looked lost, like he didn't know how he'd gotten to this point. "I'm angry," Colbert finally said, his voice lower now but still trembling with emotion, "because you waltzed in here acting like you're better than everyone else, like you have all the answers." "Stephen, I never said I was better than anyone," Denzel replied. "I said we all need to look in the mirror. That includes me. I'm not perfect, and I've never claimed to be." "But you act like it," Colbert insisted, "with your perfect responses and your calm voice and your moral superiority." "Or maybe," Denzel said quietly, "you're projecting your own insecurities onto me." That was apparently the last straw. Colbert's face went from red to purple. "Get out," he said through gritted teeth. "Excuse me?" Denzel asked, genuinely surprised for the first time during the entire exchange. "You heard me. Get out. Get off my stage. This interview is over." The audience gasped audibly. Some people started to boo, though it wasn't clear if they were booing Colbert or supporting his decision. Denzel looked around the studio, then back at Colbert. "Stephen, are you sure this is how you want to handle this, in front of all these people?" "I'm sure," Colbert said, though his voice was shaking now. "Security." Two security guards appeared from the wings, looking uncomfortable and confused. They clearly had no idea what was happening or what they were supposed to do. "Gentlemen," Denzel said to the security guards with dignity, "it's okay. I'll leave on my own." He turned back to Colbert one more time. "Stephen, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, and I hope your audience gets to see the real you from now on, because they deserve that honesty. Just go," Colbert muttered, not meeting his eyes. Denzel walked toward the edge of the stage, then paused and turned back to address the studio audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Remember that you have the power to demand better from all of us, from your entertainers, your politicians, and your media. Don't settle for anything less than the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." With that, he walked off the stage, leaving behind a stunned studio audience and a host who looked like he'd just realized he'd made the biggest mistake of his career. Colbert stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, looking around at the faces in the audience. Some were angry, some were confused, but most just looked disappointed. "Well," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "we'll be right back after this commercial break." But as the cameras stopped rolling and the audience began to murmur among themselves, everyone knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The mask had slipped, and there was no putting it back on.